They were worshipped as gods, architects of life, sculptors of stars. The engineers, a civilization older than human memory, mastered the power to create life from nothing. With biotechnology beyond comprehension, they seeded countless worlds, including Earth, guiding primitive species across aeons. But something went wrong. By the time we discovered the remnants of their empire, their civilization had vanished. Ruined cities, abandoned ships, frozen corpses. All that remained were scattered traces, and the shadows of a war lost to time. This is the story of the Engineers' Civil War, a secret conflict between gods, fought not for power but for philosophy. A war that ended with the extinction of an empire and the birth of a monster. Long before humanity learned to speak, the engineer race began to fracture. As their empire expanded and their mastery of biology grew, two philosophical factions emerged: the creators. These were the original engineers, peaceful, spiritual, ritualistic. They believed in sacrificial creation. Life was sacred, and its birth required humility and self-offering. They built great cities like the ones seen on Paradise. There, engineers practiced ancient rites, including the sacrifice ritual, where one of their own would ingest a genetic accelerant, dissolve into the waters of a world, and seed life. To the creators, this was the divine purpose of their race: to give life selflessly and preserve cosmic balance. They honored ancestry, enshrined their wisdom in the Hall of Heads, and lived without weapons or war. The destroyers. But not all engineers agreed. On distant colonies such as LV-2033, a radical group diverged from the old path. These engineers saw the universe differently, not as something to nurture, but to control. To them, the gift of creation had been squandered. Life had become chaotic, corrupt, and dangerous, especially humanity, reckless, flawed, violent. The destroyers came to believe their own creations had failed, so they turned to purification. They weaponized their biotechnology. They abandoned sacrifice and began engineering the Black Goo, a mutagen capable of rewriting life, mutating organisms, and unleashing biological terror. This was no longer creation. It was controlled extinction. They built massive juggernauts, crescent-shaped biomechanical warships designed not for travel, but to deliver death. They stockpiled urns of the Black Goo, developed devastating strains of it, and began experimenting with deadly organisms, possibly including the Xenomorph. The ideological divide soon became irreversible. The creators pleaded for balance, for restraint. The destroyers accused them of cowardice. They believed that true mastery meant not only creating life, but shaping it, controlling it, and if necessary, ending it. Tensions exploded into sabotage into purges. Civil war had begun. Not with conventional armies, but with biological weapons and ideological genocide. Entire colonies turned silent. Communication collapsed. Some planets were consumed by goo outbreaks. Others became battlegrounds for unspoken horrors. The destroyers began using the Black Goo not just against enemies, but against their own kind, seeking to wipe out the creator lineage entirely. It is likely that Paradise, the home of the creators, was among the last holdouts. A peaceful society unprepared for war, caught off guard by betrayal from within. On LV-223, the war reached its boiling point. There, the destroyers were refining the Black Goo, possibly incorporating genetic material from ancient alien life forms such as the Xenomorph's ancestors. The goal? To create the ultimate bioweapon, a form of life that would kill without mercy, propagate without limit, and obey no master. But in their arrogance, they lost control. The last recordings, seen as holograms in Prometheus, show engineers running in panic. Their own experiments had turned on them. One by one, they died in terror. Their base sealed itself shut. only a few juggernauts remained operational, intended to launch the Black Goo toward Earth, to eliminate what they saw as a failed creation, humanity. But they never launched. Something or someone stopped them. Back on Paradise, the final blow came from beyond the stars. Centuries later, a synthetic named David, the creation of humans, discovered an engineered juggernaut. Armed with knowledge stolen from the destroyers, he journeyed to Paradise and dropped the Black Goo on its people. In seconds, the creators were gone. Their flesh bubbled, their screams were frozen in time. Their once beautiful city became a crypt. It is likely that David's attack coincided with the aftermath of the war. The destroyers had either already wiped out much of the creator bloodline or had been destroyed themselves by their own creations. David became the final architect of the engineers' extinction. Though the engineers didn't create the Xenomorph, they undeniably played a role in its evolution. The derelict ship on LV-426, discovered in Alien 1979, was likely a destroyer battleship, carrying weaponized eggs across the stars. Eggs mutated by the Black Goo into a perfect predator. The pilot, fossilized, chest burst, may have been delivering the cargo to another warfront before becoming its first victim. These creatures were never meant to build. They were never meant to obey. They were extinction incarnate. A mystery remains. Why did the engineers invite humanity to LV-223? Cave paintings on Earth clearly point to the stars. To engineer outposts, the most likely answer is this: the creators invited us. The destroyers intercepted the message. What was meant to be communion became a trap. What was meant to be first contact became a death sentence. The Civil War had no victor, only ruin. The creators were annihilated. The destroyers fell victim to their own hubris, consumed by the very horrors they created. Their knowledge died with them. Their technology now lies abandoned, waiting to be rediscovered, repurposed, and misused by the species they once tried to destroy. The engineers' downfall was not just a war. It was a cautionary tale. They reached too far. They tried to play God. They divided over belief, turned science into weaponry, and in doing so ensured their extinction. And now, in the wake of their collapse, humanity stands at the same threshold. We've created our own destroyers: artificial intelligence, synthetic life, genetic engineering. We've inherited their toys, but not their wisdom. And as we walk their path, we must ask ourselves, will we fall as they did? In the cold silence of space, drifting among derelict ships and blackened temples, the truth lingers like ash. The engineers' civil war is over, but the consequences have just begun.